Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet, and let's get started. The most memorable fire me I frickin' dare you work moment you've ever had, part 8. 19 years old, working in a crummy retail job as my first job after high school. Hourly minimum wage was $5.15. Weekly hours could be as low as 9 or as high as 50. Dave, the manager, was a chubby jerk. He called me into work on my day off because someone else had called in sick. I told him no because I had commitments that day. The following day, he's furious and tells me that he didn't call to ask for a favor, but rather to politely remind me to come in and come in again soon. I declined his offer. Declared something along the lines of, "When I'm not here, I don't get paid enough to care about this place. I don't think your management issues with driving away staff are significant enough to cause me to postpone my planned leisure activities on my day off." "You know, for that attitude, I can fire you for that," he angrily jumped on me. "Do it," I said. "My hours are horrible, you're a bad manager, and the only reason you were hired was because your wife begged her brother, who works at corporate, to give you a position for which you're unfit. The only thing that'll happen if I get fired is that I'll be able to find another job where, at worst, I can earn the same as I do here and avoid dealing with you." Remarkably, he conceded. I described the incident to the other staff members and told them that he was a bark and not a bite. What happened next was that for about a month, the employees of the store knew that the manager would give in if anyone dared to question his behavior, and he stiffened up and pushed me once more. This time, we were unloading the truck early in the morning. In a week, we received one truck on Wednesday mornings only. The only person who unloaded the truck was me. I knew I wouldn't have to close on that one day alone out of the entire week. He made the decision to come in and micromanage me while I was unloading the truck, telling me that my method was incorrect. I told him, "I've been doing this longer than you've been a manager, and until I see you help unload a truck, I'm not gonna take your advice seriously," as I stopped what I was doing. He then angrily yelled at me for disobeying him within the store. Well, this is how I see it. You can either stay here and let me finish, or you can get a pallet jack, unload this truck, and get everything out on the sales floor while I get a newspaper and look for another job, I said to him while he was still working. I genuinely don't care which option you select because we won't be in the same room in either case. After leaving once more, he returns after 10 minutes, yelled at me for not finishing, called me slow and lazy, said that my intelligence was comparable to that of a marble, and concluded by calling me a stuttering idiot. "I'm done," I declared as I lowered the pallet jack and exited the stockroom. After clocking out, I told a couple of my coworkers what he'd said. The Monday after, I started a new job. Despite working 50 hours a week, the pay was only slightly higher than what the retail job paid, nearly twice as much. Since then, I have not held a retail position. That was in 1998. I used to work at a job where I was the only person who knew how to disassemble, clean, repair, and reassemble all of the equipment in addition to handling weekly and monthly maintenance. I once had a boss tell me that anyone could do the job that I wasn't doing enough. They had manuals for every piece of equipment, so if I didn't step up, I'd either be fired or something else. That evening, I disassembled and cleaned every piece of equipment, including the weekly and monthly ones, leaving it to be figured out by them the next morning. I had the day off, so after I got home, I turned off my phone for good. I discovered that I had originally received irate texts telling me to go back and put everything back together when I turned it on the following day. This went on for an hour. I then received texts threatening to fire me. Next, texts pleading with me to come back. More texts followed that attempt to make concessions to OT. After that, I apologized and did not say anything else for the remainder of the day. The head boss, however, wanted to see me as soon as I arrived the following day. When I returned the following day, more than half of the items had not been assembled, and what had been was done so haphazardly that it would need to be taken out and reassembled. As soon as I was spotted entering, my boss and their boss asked to see me so I could explain myself. When I got to the office, I told them to just fire me right then and there or to just drop it and let me put everything back together if they weren't there to apologize. After exchanging glances, they said I could return to work. My boss never again called me lazy. I used to work for a company that ran several Microsoft SQL Server 2005 servers. Microsoft released its first real SQL server in 2005, complete with all the features of the big iron of today. Even after 10 years, it remains valuable. The databases were created by the developers, but I optimized their queries, indexed the data, and kept track of backup schedules and backups. It was a bit silly of them to depend on me because I was only a temporary contractor with a 12-month fixed term. I was viewed as a contractor rather than a team player, more like a do this, go there, jump here lackey. Orders were yelled, and tasks were completed with terse, concise specifications. I was made to feel completely alienated. Alright, the contract wasn't exclusive and the money was fine. They couldn't argue with the outcome, but they didn't want me and thought I was invading. All servers are operating faster and more consistently than before. There hasn't been a significant SQL server outage in the entire year, and development databases are delivered in less than an hour instead of 3. I uplifted older systems that ran DTS packages into SSIS DTSX, which allowed them to operate hundreds of times faster in certain situations. A job that was so slow that it had to run on the weekends could now run 4 times a day. When some blockers vanished, management started to notice, and my name was mentioned whenever they did. As my contract was about to expire, the team leader, who also happened to be the one giving me the cold shoulder, offered me a full-time job at 75% of what I was getting, stating, "We sorta don't know what to do without you now, so we'd like to welcome you aboard." Apparently, they had warmed up to the idea of having me around. My salary expectations were not met by them, citing pay structure violations and the statement, "We expect you to be reasonable. It's not a real developer role anyway." I declined to accept. They appeared startled or taken aback. Why they would expect me to be happy taking a huge pay cut is beyond me. Surprisingly, they didn't need any handover paperwork at all, and I had a fairly typical last day. For them, it turned out to be rather awful. In essence, the business began to regress and losses ensued. I moved on, spent 8 weeks working for a large company, and am still there 11 years later. A year after I left, the old company filed for bankruptcy. What unpleasant situations have you dealt with in your HOA or with S neighbors? Part 8. In our rental case, the HOA would tell our property manager what we did wrong, and the property manager would then call us to explain. People told on us for a lot of things that had nothing to do with us. Someone called to tell us that we can't have a grill on our front porch. We didn't even have a grill. We were told that we could only park 1 car in the street. The garage is where our other 2 cars should be. At that time, we only had 1 car. People in the neighborhood told us that our dogs were barking all night long, so we agreed. This house didn't even have a yard, so we didn't have any dogs. Being told by our property manager you need to move the doormat that's leaning against your house is the strangest thing that can happen. When the husband goes outside, he sees a doormat leaning against the house next door. Wouldn't it have been easier for the person who reported it to just knock on the door and say something? The people across the street used their porch as storage the whole 3 years we lived here. We got in trouble as homeowners in a different neighborhood for not taking down our Christmas lights on time. We had been away for the funeral of my grandfather since the middle of January, but as soon as we got the write-up, we took them down right away. No warnings, just here's a write-up, you need to go before the board where they'll decide if you have to pay a fine. I told them the lights were turned off. They told me that we didn't take down all the decorations. There was a "Let It Snow" snowman on the door and snowflakes in the window. Not Christmas decorations, but winter ones. They were very rude about it until I told them they had broken their own rules by not warning us and that we felt like they were after us. They let it go. We changed the way our yard looks about 6 months ago. It was clear that something was wrong because the landscaper had pavers sitting in front of the house. It was sent to us in the mail telling us to stop landscaping our backyard without first getting permission from the HOA. There was a picture in the letter. The photo's angle made it clear that the person who took it had gone into our backyard. That's not something they can do. I told them about this in an email, and they dropped it. As a real estate agent, most of the condos I sell are in 55-plus communities. Some HOA presidents and board members are good people, but some condo association managers are just busybodies who get sick pleasure from using the little power they have as a community association manager. What about the OP's story about the HOA president calling the landlord first? That person was probably acting so crazy because they were mad that there was a renter in their community at all. Many investors like to buy homes in these areas and rent them out because the tenants are great. However, the HOA presidents and board members are known to be envious of anyone making money, even if it's legal, so they were trying to make things hard for the owner. The board has even set up camp outside of my open houses so they could get inside and look for something to find the owner with. There isn't much morale here. Some of them were great to get along with, but others were lonely old people with depression whose only contact with the outside world and only real reason to leave the house was to be president of the condo association. People in that mental state can be cruel and obsessive without realizing it because their living situation has distorted their view. An out-of-state company ran the HOA for the first house I ever bought, which was a brand new one. They run a lot of HOAs across the US, but I can't remember the name. A person could only vote in the HOA if they had lived in their home for 10 years straight. That means that no one in the neighborhood would be able to vote for the first 10 years, and the company would probably still have the most votes even after that time. HOA fee when we moved in? About $30 every month. HOA fee after less than a year? $95 every month. They decided to include a basic cable package from a nearby cable company that I didn't even use because I already had Dish Network. I don't know why. There's no way to say no. Part of the fee is all. That cable company only showed shows in standard definition. Poor chemicals were also an extra cost. There was no pool for everyone. Fat, old, and very hairy man who walked around the neighborhood shirtless was in charge of HOA rules and fines. Trash can by the curb the next day after it was picked up? Fine. Any trash cans that can be seen besides on trash day? Fine. A weed in your yard? Fine, etc. When that house went into foreclosure, I had to leave. Yay, housing bubble! I then got a bunch of letters in the mail saying that they were going to send me to collections for the many fines they kept adding for having weeds in the yard. This, even though I told them it was in foreclosure and the empty lot next door was full of weeds that the HOA never cleaned up because the housing builder went bankrupt and didn't finish the neighborhood. F HOAs. I will never again buy a home in a neighborhood with an HOA. My HOA told me that I needed to paint my house, and they were right, it looked pretty bad. I chose to change the colors, which needs permission from the HOA. Ken Bunkport Green is an old Benjamin Moore color that I chose. When I turned it in for approval, they told me I needed to change it to something a little softer to show that they were serious. It was fine by me, but I still painted the house Ken Bunkport Green. It was funny because the chief bee who turned down my color came by and said, "Aren't you glad we softened it up?" I smiled and said, "Yes, thank you very much." A management company was hired by our HOA to handle the day-to-day operations of the business. That meant that a guy would ride around taking pictures of petty BS and mailing violations to homeowners. This is what it meant. I got into a lot of arguments over nothing at all. Due to the fact that the bylaws did not permit the imposition of fines, it was discovered that the HOA did not have any teeth behind the violations. Someone had the brilliant idea to first begin imposing fines in order to ensure compliance with the regulations. I successfully ran for and won the position of vice president of the board at that time. Furthermore, another gentleman who is sick of this nonsense ran and won the race as well. Despite the fact that we lacked the authority to dissolve the HOA, we came to the conclusion that the next best thing would be to paralyze it. In the absence of our presence, the board would never be able to reach a quorum in order to carry out its business. They never did. Yup, that's why I'm president of my HOA. There are meetings, but they're more like drinking sessions. There's a small group of neighbors who want speed bumps, more stop signs, traffic circles, speed cameras, and other things because the kids! While I'm here, I can stop them and anyone else from being silly. My plan is to act like I'm not sure about an issue, and then, when one I really dislike comes up, I take it as my own and do such a bad job on it that it doesn't get done. I'm the leader. There's no one who can stop me. All of them think I'm doing a great job, though, because I'm such a good actor. The problems I'm talking about are almost impossible to solve. If you want to watch the part 7, click the link here. I'm very, very glad to see you all in the comments again, and many thanks for your support.